Thank you, everybody. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Well, my job today is actually to introduce Sebastian Gorka. As one of the founding sponsors and host of the Rod of Iron Freedom Festival, I am proud to welcome and introduce a great American patriot, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Sebastian's story is one that is dear to my heart. My father suffered in a North Korean communist concentration camp for 2 years and 8 months before he was liberated by General MacArthur and the U.S. Armed Forces. Paul, Sebastian's father, was arrested by the secret police, tortured, and given a life sentence for founding a Christian student organization in Stalinist Hungary. After 2 years in solitary confinement, 2 years in the prison coal mine, and 2 years in a central political prison in Budapest, Paul was eventually liberated by freedom fighters of the Hungarian Revolution of 1956 and escaped across minefields to a life of liberty in the UK. Shortly after, Paul married and fathered Sebastian. Having escaped the German Nazis and the Stalinist communists, Paul raised Sebastian to love freedom. Sebastian, his love of talk radio developed early as a child, as he would listen to all night to the shows of the London Broadcasting Company with a small transistor radio under his pillow. It was with his special family background and growing up under the influence of conservative warrior Margaret Thatcher that Sebastian Gorka learned how to fight totalitarian ideologies, be they fascism, communism, or global jihadism. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, he served in the British Army Reserves in the military intelligence unit. After the attacks of 1911, he became a professor on the Pentagon-funded counter-terrorism program run out of Germany. In 2008, he moved to America with his family, where he continued to work for the Defense Department and became a proud American citizen in 2012. He obtained his doctorate in political science from Corvinus University in Budapest and was a fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government in Washington. He served as an associate for the Dean of Congressional Affairs Relations for the Special Operations Community at the National Defense University and also taught in the master's program in Georgetown University. In 2020, President Donald Trump named Gorka the National Security Education Board. This board provides strategic consultation and was established by a congressional act in 1991. Dr. Gorka has briefed the CIA, the DIA, the U.S. Navy SEALs, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, served as an expert for the DIJ during the Boston bombing trial, and testified before Congress on the threat of global jihadism. He remains a great instructor at the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School at Fort Bragg, the home of the Green Berets. Gorka writes for The Hill and has written 2 books for the Regenary Publishing. His first, Defending Jihad, was a national bestseller, and his latest, released in October, is called Why We Fight: Defeating America's Enemies with No Apologies. Before launching his Salem show, America First, with Sebastian Gorka, he was an advisor to the candidate Donald J. Trump. He served on the staff of the White House in 2017 as Deputy Assistant to the President for Strategy. And with this said, we'd like to welcome Sebastian Gorka to the stage. Sebastian, if you will. Thank you. The stage is yours.
I told Justin that was far too long. He should have just said, some guy with a radio show in a funny accent. Good morning, everybody. Please be seated. And if you got them, smoke them. Can we do that? I got some cigars I want to smoke later. Thanks to Tony, my buddy, and Jerry. Guys, I don't know where to start. What a week. What an unbelievable week. What an insane 2.5 years. And what about today? I don't know if you guys are just having fun here, staying out of the rain. I was in a car with my friend now for the last 4.5 hours, and I was snoozing a little bit. Sorry, Tony, about the snoring. And I wake up, and my phone's blowing up. And what's happening? Oh, there's another war. And now, where is it? It's in the Middle East. If you haven't, don't do it now, but after today's events, when you go outside, when you check out all these amazing vendors, look at my social media account. I have some very good friends, former operators from the special operations community, who are just sending me from their contacts in the Middle East videos and photographs that they're horrific. Don't show your children. But look at what a lack of American leadership has caused. The first video I received was a beautiful woman, Israeli woman, long hair down to the middle of her back, being ripped out of the back of an SUV by her hair, covered in blood, and being taken hostage by Hamas terrorists. The same terrorists that are funded by Iran, which was just given $6 billion by Biden. $6 billion. Can I tell you a story about, there's a crime in the US code called providing aid to terrorists, financial aid. There was a cop in the DC Transit Authority who was not a good guy. He thought he was talking to an ISIS recruiter in Washington. And he said, I'm pro-jihad. I'm a Muslim. I want to give those guys fighting in ISIS some money. He gave this recruiter $500, who was actually an FBI plant. That cop is now in a supermax federal facility for providing, quote, material support to terrorists. $500. Biden just gave $6 billion to Iran. $6 billion. Guess who should be in prison? Right? Can I just go through the last 2.5 years? Can we just talk about what we and the world have lived through? I have my daily show on Salem, and I want to say thank you to Justin. I'm not NPR. I don't get $500 million of taxpayer money every year. I run a business. I work for a company that is, free market. And without people like Justin, who have spines of steel, without Car Firearms being my sponsor, we can't tell the truth. We can't do it. So God bless. Let's hear it for Justin, Moon, and Carl. And by the way, if you haven't heard my spiel every Friday on Second Amendment Friday, every day I carry a 9mm car on my ankle in DC. And when I'm going special places, I have my 10mm just here. All right, so good stuff. On my Newsmax show, every Sunday night, I did a special on what's happened to the US military. And I decided to just do a little math on the back of an envelope. And I thought, how many people have died wearing a uniform for our nation since the end of World War II? Since the end of World War II. So I'm talking about Korea, Vietnam, Iraq I, Iraq II, and Afghanistan. And I did the math. And it came up to 103,000 men and women who were killed in action in 70 years. Remember that number, 103,000. Then I decided to look for another number. How many people have been murdered because of fentanyl and other illicit drugs smuggled across the border when Biden opened it. You can find it, it's not easy, but deep down on a sub-page, sub-paragraph, sub-index of the CDC's website, there's the figure. In 12 months of the Biden administration's open border policy, 110,000 Americans were murdered by fentanyl and illicit drugs smuggled into this country. Do you understand what that means? More people were murdered in 12 months than in 70 years in combat. And that was a direct result of this administration. But that's just one thing. Just one thing. Let's talk about the border a little more. Latest estimates are that in the last 2.5 years, at least 8 million illegals have crossed the border. That we know of. That we know of. So let's say you add the gotaways, it's probably another 8 million. We're pushing 20 million in less than 3 years. Now, we can be pissed at that because no nation survives with open borders. There is no nation in the world today that has open borders except America. None. But you know what's worse than that? What's horrific? Left-wing organizations like Human Rights Watch, like the United Nations, have cataloged that of the women and children being smuggled across the border, up to 60 or 70% are raped or sexually abused. Girls. Just last week in Minnesota, an 11-year-old girl managed to escape from the house she was kept in and make it to a local hospital. If you don't believe me, just look it up. Everything I say, just look it up. The 11-year-old girl was treated for rape and managed to identify the house she escaped from. The CBP, God bless the CBP, Customs and Border Protection went back, found the building where this 11-year-old had been tied to a bed and raped continually every day, and found the house full of illegal alien men. What kind of evil bastard does that? Don't laugh. Don't you dare laugh. Don't you dare laugh. An 11-year-old girl was repeatedly raped by illegal aliens on our soil. Let's go beyond the border. Fentanyl deaths. Let's talk about the fact that if you live in a Democrat city and it's run by Democrat chiefs of police and mayors, you're just not safe. We live in a nation where a pro-Antifa activist can be stabbed to death in front of his girlfriend on camera in New York. And what does the lunatic girlfriend do? Did you see this story this week? She refused to identify the murderer who stabbed her boyfriend in the heart because he was black. Guys, this is a cult. Your boyfriend is murdered in front of you, and you're on the side of the guy who killed your boyfriend? These people are lunatics. But we could go on and on and on. Let's talk about our military. Let's talk about the fact that we withdrew from Afghanistan and surrendered to the Taliban. We left them $80 billion worth of equipment that they're now selling. And we exited in such a shambolic way that 13 Marines, a corpsman, and a Green Beret sergeant were blown to pieces by ISIS at the Kabul airport. When asked about it, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, a former four-star general, who was, of course, on the board of Raytheon before he became Secretary of Defense, said, quote, under oath on the floor of the Congress, "I have no regrets about how we left Afghanistan." So I guess 13 Americans murdered, you don't give a crap about, do you, Lloyd Austin? Oh, and when their bodies come back for the distinguished transfer on U.S. soil, that senile cretin, that evil bag of pus, Biden, just repeatedly looks at his watch as the caskets are coming. Not once, not twice, half a dozen times that scumbag looks at his watch. Well, how about this? Maybe you missed this. Last Sunday, that overweight disgrace to the U.S. Army uniform, Mark Milley, left his position as chairman of the Joint Chiefs, which is the most senior position in the U.S. military. And in his farewell speech, he was angry. And I've never seen him so angry. I've never seen him angry like that when he was testifying about what happened in Kabul. I didn't see him angry about the invasion of Ukraine. I never saw him this angry until he got to talking about his former boss, President Trump. In a speech in uniform, in front of the commander-in-chief, in front of the vice president, he called President Trump a wannabe dictator. A wannabe dictator? Well, that's weird, Mark Milley. Because if he was a wannabe dictator, why did you serve him as commander-in-chief's chairman of the Joint Chiefs? Why didn't you resign? If you have a molecule of honor in your body, why didn't you resign? Because you have no honor. Because you should be in the brig at Leavenworth, you seditious, traitorous scum. This is a man who has said, repeatedly confirmed, that he stayed in office so he could undermine the president. This is a serving general who has admitted that in office, whilst serving President Trump, he had confidential discussions with his counterpart in Beijing, General Li, telling the head of the Chinese Communist military, hey, buddy, if my boss, wants to do something with China, don't worry, I'll give you a heads up. That is actually the textbook definition of treason. That is giving aid and succor to our enemies. The largest communist dictatorship on the planet today, and our chairman of the Joint Chiefs is saying, don't worry, I'll give you a heads up. But if these things are, millions of miles away from you, if you can't relate to 11-year-old girls being raped repeatedly, or fentanyl flooding across the border, or what's happening at the Pentagon, let's talk about what our MC said earlier. This week, Newsweek obtained confidential sources inside the FBI to talk about the latest threat assessment to America. Now, can I just preface this by saying Newsweek didn't leak this information. Newsweek are left-wing journalist scum. Okay? This wasn't, hey, big investigative journalism. This was Newsweek acting for the FBI and for Biden. This was a propaganda dump. And what did Newsweek with their exclusive multiple sources say? The threat to America is you. You're the threat. If you are a MAGA voter, think of this, the phrase, that lady's got on her hat. MAGA. That makes you a potential domestic terrorist. Wanting to make America great again makes you a domestic extremist. You're good with Biden, you're good with the DOJ, you're good with the FBI if you want to destroy America, right? If your hat said, destroy America, that'd be great, that'd be cool. But wanting to make it great again makes you a potential terrorist. I'm a cradle Catholic. I went to the Benedictines for 14 years and the old school Jesuits in college. The FBI field office in Virginia wrote a threat analysis that's now out there, you can read it, that said Catholics who are traditional, especially who go to Latin Mass, are potential domestic threats. Excuse me? If I'm traditional? You mean like I believe in marriage? I believe a man is a man and a woman is a woman? That makes me the threat to America? Not the hospital like Boston Children's Hospital that is actually removing the healthy breasts of young girls and, quote, transitioning them to being males. That's fine. That's not diabolical. Removing a boy's penis and saying, now you're a girl. That's dandy. That's fine. No. Believing that XY chromosomes mean something. And if you're XX, you will be born a girl and you will die a woman. Doesn't matter what you do to your body, God made you that way. Right? So what does this all mean? What does this all mean? I've taught at civilian universities, I've taught at military universities, and wherever I was and whoever the audience was, whether it's civilians, whether it was Green Berets, SEALs, you name it, I always told them, there's only one question that ever really matters, and that question is, so what? And that's the question we have to answer for ourselves today. So what? What are you going to do about it? Now, God forbid, it devolves into what's happening in Ukraine or Israel or what happened in the biggest war of our nation. Let's not forget, the Civil War cost the lives of more Americans than any war we've ever been in. Any war, more than World War II. 600,000 Americans were killed by Americans. So God forbid that happens in this nation. So how do we stop that? We have to take America back. How do we take America back? Bingo. Who said that? Put your hand up. Right, MAGA lady. She nailed it. Tip O'Neill had a phrase in the 90s for the Democrats. He said, all politics is local. Kind of catchy, kind of, wonky, inside beltway jargon. You know what? They meant it. It's real. And they lived it for the last 30 years. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's cool as an immigrant. I am a legal immigrant to the United States. Thank you. As an immigrant, it's pretty cool to walk around the White House and work for the president. Pretty cool, right? I still get tingles when I think about it. It's cool to be a congressman. It's cool to be a senator. But it's really irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. Our founding fathers were clear. Washington should be irrelevant. Apart from war and interstate commerce, Washington should be irrelevant. Where's politics really? In your local village, town, city, county. That's America. That's where America is. So you've got to ask yourself, why does a billionaire who broke the Bank of England, a guy who, and don't take my word for it, watch the video where he actually admits it. As a Jewish kid, he helped the Nazis confiscate valuables from Jews in Budapest Soros actually, he laughed about it in an interview that's pretty hard to find now. It's weird how they've scrubbed it from the internet. He admitted to collaborating in the confiscation of Jewish wealth in Budapest for the Nazis. Why does this guy spend the last 20, 30 years pumping his money into local elections, funding prosecutors like Alvin Bragg in New York? Why? Because he gets it. If I can put crazies like me in positions of power locally, we've got it. We own the country. And I get it. You don't like the rhinos, you don't like the Republicans, but how about this little data point from my former Breitbart buddy, Raheem Kassam? Local positions in the GOP, and I don't mean the serious ones like a precinct captain, but anything below precinct captain where maybe it's a couple of days of work a month. Do you know how many of those positions are empty in America? More than 45%. So don't bitch and moan at me about how you don't like the GOP if you're sitting on your ass at home eating Cheetos. That's right? I'm not interested. Not interested. You want to save America? Get off your ass and do something. In November, for the president's announcement, by the way, the leader of the opposition is now 50 points ahead anybody on our side. DeSantis is at 9% in second place. And, nice. And Donald Trump is currently beating Biden in the polls. Technically, he's the leader of the opposition, to use a British phrase. At the same time, the leader of the opposition is facing 730 years in prison. You have to understand the situation we're in. This is like Venezuela. The leader of the opposition, most likely able to defeat the current incumbent, is facing 700 years in prison. So here's the question. When when President was re-announcing his election campaign, it was November, and I went to Mar-a-Lago to be there. And it was great. It was great. Hanging with the president, the energy, seeing Melania. What was my wife doing back in Virginia? She left the house at 4:30 in the morning. And I was still at Mar-a-Lago eating, the coconut shrimp, having fun. And I could see on my phone, on the security cameras, she came home at 10 o'clock. So what was my wife doing from 4 to 10? No, she's doing that today, actually. She's got 900 doors to knock on, okay? 900. My wife was the chief election officer for our district of Virginia. And I tell you something, with Katie on deck, there were no hanky-panky with those ballots, all right? So if my wife, who hates politics because she's sane, can do that, knocking on doors now while I'm here with you guys having fun, or out being a chief election officer for 16 hours in a day, guess what? What's your excuse? So I want to take 2 or 3 questions, but I'll leave you with this. As a Christian, every morning you should pray. And you should ask yourself, in addition to your petitions to God, you should ask yourself, what am I going to do for His glory today? What am I going to do? Just keep it simple, 1 or 2 things. And at the end of the day, we have what Catholics call an examination of conscience. You pray, you do your petitions for your family, your loved ones, for the nation, and then you ask yourself, did I do what I said I'd do for God and for our Lord today? Did I do it? So here's my request to you. In the morning, when you say your prayers, I usually do it walking my dogs. At the end of your prayers and your commitment to what you will do to God or for God today, do one more thing. Ask yourself, what will I do to save America? What am I going to do to save America today? I'm going to knock on doors. Am I going to run for the local school board? What am I going to do today? And at the end of the day, as you give thanks to God, as you say your prayers before going to sleep, ask yourself, did I do enough today? Did I do enough? Because you've heard this 1,000,000 times before. This election is the most important of your lifetime. Guess what? This time it's true. This time it's true. If they pack the Supreme Court, if they lower the voting age to 16, we're done. We're toast. We're done. We're gone. Right? We can't let that happen. So step up to the plate, serve God, and serve America. Because if not you, who? And if not now, when? God bless. All right, let's take a couple of questions. MAGA lady, let's do it. I love it.
So we as the War Room Posse, who love
troublemakers,
love y'all, want to know, okay, Jesus is our Savior, He is our answer, but my question is, Trump knows these people cheated, just like we all know.
Sure.
I hope he has a plan in place. Any insight?
You think we have the press here. You think I'm going to give away the plan? I'm pretty young, but I wasn't born yesterday. Look, I gave you the plan. We have a election in Virginia right now, and in my county, half of the polls, you can sit down, half of the polls do not have any GOP observers. Do you understand what that means? It means with the early voting, it means every ballot that's put into the box will only be supervised by a Democrat poll watcher. It's like, you're just asking for trouble. Are you nuts? This is in a state with a Republican governor. So it's what I just told you. Don't ask me or Bannon or Mar-a-Lago what the plan is. You are the plan. You are the plan. I had Mark Levin on my radio show, America First, for an hour last week. And I asked him the usual question I ask my big guests. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about America? And he said, optimistic or pessimistic? I don't give a damn. Did they ask Patton in the middle of the war, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the battle? No, I fought. That's what I did. And he didn't say, when he gets callers who say, what are we going to do, Mark? He immediately spits back at them. What do you mean, what are we going to do? What are you going to do? That's the plan. It's up to us. Next question, lady on the, two ladies. That's the last two questions, red and then on the edge. It's a ladies' night.
So I'm a co-defendant with President Trump. I'm also an alternate. I was an alternate elector for Trump as well.
God bless.
I have many lawsuits, so I'm doing my part.
Good.
I have a question overall. I love our president, obviously, but I have a hard time understanding why he continues to go back to the RNC, who continuously kicks him right in the balls every single election. Can you please tell me why he continues to work with these people who are working against him all the time?
Well, the real answer to that question is the system we've inherited in America. In America, in the last 120 years, we've created a two-party system. Right? I mean, look at any third-party candidate. Whether it's Ross Perot, whether it's libertarians, you don't have a shot. You've got to have mechanisms. You've got to have machinery. You've got to have a ground game. So President Trump, you're right, has been royally screwed by the RNC, and especially Ronna Romney McDaniel, for years. It's just a fact. They hate him. The GOP hates President Trump because he is deemed to be the disruptor of business as usual and footsie under the table with the Democrats and the lobbyists, right? They hate him. But you have to go back to the well. Why? Because you can't build that infrastructure separately without them. My question is, I'm going to go see the president soon. How can we get rid of her? How can we, replace Ronna is the question. Great question. Last question from you. Go ahead. Any more questions? Over there on the edge, last question, lady in the raincoat.
Thank you for coming. My question is, I'm the mother of children, their 20s moving into their 30s. What do we tell them that they see this is happening? My children aren't you know, they don't believe in the norms. But when they speak to their friends, they're so far off. What do we tell them?
So pick your fights, all right? My job is to be the, you know, the pugilistic berserker on radio every day, right? I get grief from my kids saying, Dad, can you just tone it down a bit? And I say, not my job, sorry, somebody else can do that stuff. I'm here to keep you guys, you know, rolling. That's my job. Pick your fights, but remember this. Number one, and my latest book, The War for America's Soul, we've got copies here. I'll be signing it afterwards. Two things. I would say two things. Number one, if you want to convince people, the most powerful way to convince people of the truth is personal stories. The left gets this, okay? They really get it. Reagan got this. President Trump gets it. You got to talk emotionally to the heart, not logic and numbers. You got to speak emotionally. The most powerful message about where America is going is listening to Justin Moon, is listening to my father's story, is listening to the guy who literally windsurfed through shark-infested waters to escape Cuba and end up in Florida. Listen to the stories of those who've lived in oppression and tell the stories. PragerU is amazing for this. The Victims of Communism Museum has a whole project on this. Spread the word of those who can tell you. And then lastly, a deeper message for everyone out there. And I'll end with this. And thank you, everybody, and God bless you all. And I was speaking to a group of MAGA hardcore voters in New Hampshire. And in the Q&A, the question of trans came up, which is truly, it's the devil's work. The Lord of Darkness is behind this. When you're sterilizing children, I mean, you're not only sterile, when a child or an adult transitions surgically, you're not just sterilizing them, you're actually making them incapable of sexual pleasure for the rest of their lives. It's just doubly diabolical. And also, they will be sick forever. You can't do that, you can't remove sexual organs and really have them heal. It never heals. So you're indebted to pharma for the rest of your life, and you're sick till you die. And oh, by the way, 45% of people who transition try to commit suicide. It's evil. It's the definition of evil. So in the Q&A, this woman stood up, and she's a nurse, and she said, Dr. G, I work in a hospital where we do abortions and where we do transition surgeries. What do I do? And you know, there are these moments when you talk where you don't need a script, you don't need talking points. You know, the big guy upstairs just kind of gives you the words and they just come out. And I said, Madam, I understand. I understand. You have to pay the bills. You have to buy a new pair of sneakers for your kids next semester. I get it. I get it. But just remember one thing. When you die, you will go to face your Maker. And you will be stood in front of your Maker. And there will be one person who will be answering for your actions. It won't be the administrator of the hospital, and it won't be the doctor who asked you to scrub in on that abortion, or to scrub in on that transition surgery. The only person answering for your actions will be you. And that's what you keep in front of you. God bless.